Thank you. And it's great to be back here, and it's great to be in such a lovely venue, which I have been informed they do mates rates for renting here. Just say a little bit for those of you that haven't heard me speak before about what Action for Market Towns is. Essentially, we're a membership organisation for about 400 towns across the country, largely in England, but increasingly in Wales and Scotland. And we work with small towns, not just typical market towns, but small towns with a population of about up to 30,000. So quite a lot of those towns are the sorts of towns that are the target of many of the recommendations within the Portas review. Probably when I spoke last time, what I spoke about, one of the things is we use the concept when we're talking about town centres, and we talk about town centres rather than high streets, so kind of wider, the secondary areas as well as the high street. We talk about towns as, treat them as a department store, so that you've got to have all the elements working together and to market them and run them together, from safe parking, good signage to, cafes, places to rest, and a whole variety of independent and multiple retailers. We published a report recently which we fed into the Portas review called 21st Century Towns, and in a sense the headline of that was about town centres, about retail and much more. And I think it's a lot of that much more that will distinguish town centres from the out of town and the shopping malls, and in a sense we can't compete with what I would say is the bland out-of-town experience. And in a sense, isn't the battle going to go on between those shopping malls and the internet, and what the town centre needs to do is to define its own territory. We fed things into the Portas review, and it was gratifying to see some of those things picked up. Is there anybody here from Wales today? Because the Welsh Government have also announced, if you like, parallel to the Portas review, a document, and I've done a bit of work comparing and contrasting. What the Welsh review is a lot stronger on is using the planning system to determine what goes on in towns. I'll come on now really to kind of a lot of the things that are in the Portas review, and really focus on, I think what is the struggle is how can individuals or individual retailers engage in many of the issues in the same way that we've just heard. And I'll talk about Action for Market Towns perspective, and then kind of throw out, as well as informing you on what some of the jargon means, throw out ways in which you can possibly get involved as retailers. I think Michael very accurately summed up the Portas pilot challenges. Apparently there are 300 towns frantically putting together bids for 12 lumps of money, and 12 quite modest lumps of money really. But it will be interesting to see, if they are genuine pilots, how they take some of the ideas and run with them. I'll finish with a little bit of guidance and input for anybody who might be involved on the margins of one of those Portas pilots. Interesting to hear that your intelligence says that the government response will be out by the end of the month. I've just been told it will be out in the spring, but the government spring lasts a lot longer than anybody else's spring. Government spring lasts until July. So why and how, I mean why firstly, why as an individual busy retailer would you want to engage in delivering some of the recommendations, and they are only recommendations until we get the government response. Well, we've grouped the recommendations again into 5 groupings, and if I just run through some of those, I'll say a little bit of the Action for Market Towns perspective, and then just kind of throw it back to you, which you can pick up in questions, is kind of why and how, as an individual business, would you want to give time to affecting things in your town. This whole concept of town teams, about how do you get people with a whole range of vested interests first coming together and then developing a plan and then acting on a plan, as they've been branded the town team. Well, that approach, there's nothing new in that approach. We've worked with towns, literally hundreds of towns, that have been doing that for years. And if you care to, I can share case studies on a process where you gather information about your town, you develop a consensus and an action plan, and then you deliver on the action plan. And some of that needs to be delivered by government, but about half of the things that come out of those action plans can be delivered by retailers, by businesses, by community groups working within the towns. And that goes alongside the strand, the localism strand, which I'll say a little bit more about, the challenges to do with that. So why would you want to, as a retailer, get involved in a committee, in a group that's talking about? Well, I think the first thing is, and again to pick up the point, is there are many of those groups that are sadly lacking in retailers. And so I think you'd be welcomed with open arms. I think you need to go into it with a perspective that you can represent the interests of other retailers on the high street, and not just self-interest. But there's a real need to have that experience of long-standing independent retail businesses within those town teams. Engaging positively in future planning, and this is where the challenge of localism, and again picking up the neighbourhood planning, in parallel to this, the whole localism bill goes through how groups can come together, and I suggest it should be the town teams coming together to develop neighbourhood plans to determine what physically happens in your high street, how that will be funded, and how that process will release money through mechanisms known as things like the community infrastructure levy, which will actually release some money to spend on some of those things. So if you were to get involved, the kind of level of involvement, it won't be quick, all of this. So to influence neighbourhood plans, typically you kind of got to commit yourself to something like getting involved in a process that's going to take about a year and a half. So are you ready for that? Are you able to kind of do something for the benefit of your wider high street, which will hopefully benefit your business if you're on the high street? One of the big things that we're championing at the moment, and really the policies probably are being written at the moment, is a whole process of what's become known as town centre first. And we've worked with a number of local authorities, chambers of commerce all around the country that have worked up fantastic schemes to reinvigorate their town centre. But it seems more and more and more the planning is really being determined by the large supermarkets. And we've worked on some very good schemes where, and some of them go into public inquiry now, where a big out-of-town scheme, because of the legal might that it has behind it, can blow out of the water well-worked plans. And so one of the things that we hope to see in a matter of weeks is that there'll be a strengthening of that town centre first policy, and also a strengthening of the confidence of the planners and the councillors within towns to defend those policies. Then there's the whole idea of multiples and independents working together. A healthy high street should have quite a mix. There's lots of challenges in getting both the independents, even more challenges of getting representatives from large multiples engaged in this whole process. Some of the retailers that we've been speaking to, we have good dialogue with Sainsbury's, which helps us understand their perspective on what they're doing, not always agree with what they're doing from a town centre point of view. Co-op retail are much more kind of on message with what we're doing in terms of they have a strong town centre focus. But it's about how to engage those. Boots is another company that is quite well organised in terms of its town centre focus. So the groups need independence, and they need multiples informing what happens. And the last thing is really kind of trying to do new things, and the things that Portas flags up. It's probably a little bit. I'm sure we can do better for innovation. They have got a big strength, a big emphasis on markets, which do play a part in our towns, and they're launching a National Markets Day. Those of you that aren't aware of it, we're participating in what was Independence Day on July the 4th last year, but is a whole month. And then they're also talking about innovative ways, pop-up shops, how you can use empty shops so that those high streets that temporarily, if you like, have missing teeth in them, how they can keep going or have something in the intervening period. But there's lots of room for greater innovation. One of the things that we're championing very much is the idea that towns as a whole can get involved in promoting local loyalty and giving rewards. And one of the things I'd like to see is a much stronger link between when people spend money in their towns, that they're rewarded by free car parking or cheaper car parking, because people make a very odd and irrational decision about where they go depending on car park charges. And they can be significant, but people will drive 10 miles to the next town to avoid a £1.50 parking charge. And you know, it'd be interesting in your attitudes to say, you know, how much would you be up for, and are you up for, to have a kind of loyalty-based scheme that kind of said to people, if you come in our town, enjoy the town, spend money in the town, then don't worry about the car parking. We'll find a mechanism to refund it to you. Really, that's just kind of touch the surface and can ask in questioning, really. But and the challenge is to yourselves is the information that you have from being on your high streets is invaluable to these town teams, neighbourhood plans, all sorts of things that are going forward. It's really how much energy have you got at the end of long days to put something, if you like, back into those towns on behalf of other retailers and behalf of yourselves as parts of the community. We're very happy to share our experiences through Michael and colleagues, really, in terms of what works and how retailers can be engaged, to kind of cut you through some of the jargon and to help you give a steer on what works. Just to finish off, to talk about these Portas pilots, has anybody had any involvement in Portas pilot bid in their town? We have one brave gentleman who's thrown himself into it. They've only got now less than 3 weeks before the bids need to go in. I think, you know, I'm hopeful that it will be a well-managed process, but what I'm also hopeful is that 12 towns will be, you know, the first of many, really. What I'd say to anybody, either this time round, do check out if something is going on in your town. I don't know how many of you, are any of you that haven't been able to get involved aware of things going on in your towns? Just the one again. Because I suspect things are going on in your towns, and it's, you know, it's a little worrying for me, probably disconcerting for you, that things may be decided on what affects your town street, and you're not aware of it. Because whether it's those Portas pilot bids or whether it's town teams with a a 1 year, 2 year brief to do something to reinvigorate your towns, as has been said, if retailers aren't actively involved in that, then it's not going to serve your interests. And I'm not really confident that it's going to serve the interests of shoppers and other users. Thank you.